Yes, Madam Speaker, my colleagues, here we are passing our 12th budget extender. We only have 10 budget bills to pass, but this is our 12th extender. This ties last year's record of 12. Next week will be our 13th, and we'll break that record. This is the latest state budget since 2010. So we are actually looking to set a modern record for more budget dysfunction in New York State. A record for failure. Let that sink in for a minute. This is really a mess. Unfortunately, this is what one-party rule looks like when no one's willing to lead. And meanwhile, like we've talked about, there were reports this week that the language for some of the largest policy issues are still not nailed down yet. I'll remind you, every day this language remains open is another day for us to finally wrap up the budget and get to the end of session as well. That's going to be a challenge there. Some very important issues that are out there. I just want to stress it again. The EV school bus mandate, our conference has been talking about it. I know we have all been hearing about it from our constituents back at home, from our school districts back at home, the mother of all unfunded mandates, especially with the school budget vote coming up next week. The reports that there are going to be a delay to this is important. They need that levity and help. And I will say to you, it's still hard for me to understand why we were always asking, the way the law is, asking school districts to convert their entire school fleets before the state of New York does not have to convert their fleet. The state of New York has a full 5 years later to do their fleet. Oh, by the way, the state of New York has an out for feasibility, cost, reliability, whatever reason they want, but our school districts do not have that. But if we'll at least, I'd like to see it repealed and go back to the drawing board, but if we can't do that, let's at least pause that in this budget. We urge you to do that. We urge that to be included. I'm sure you're hearing from the same school districts in your school district just like we are. Also, I want to just reiterate that point, given that report that came out this week relative to our deteriorating roads and bridges, there is a demand and a need in our communities. Our communities right now with the delays are waiting for their aid numbers. That CHIPS money is critically important. And I will remind you, CHIPS doesn't just benefit upstate, it benefits the city, it benefits Long Island, it benefits everyone, and it's done in a fair way. With that deteriorating road and bridges, we need to have an increase in the CHIPS program. And I'm glad the chairman mentioned there's a possibility that can happen. I hopefully hear that. But with all this still outstanding, nothing finalized, we're close on a lot of issues, apparently. The governor has already went out there and declared victory on this budget. Declared victory on a budget that's not even written, on a budget this legislature has not even voted on yet, on a budget that the public has not seen. And as part of this so-called victory, we are now learning that the state is putting together another $4 billion bailout for New York City. Let's be clear what this means. New York City is going to get a bailout while the rest of the state is being left in the dark, still waiting on the state support they need to plan their own budgets, our school districts, our local municipalities to plan their road projects, one thing after another. And my colleagues, this is exactly why you don't take a victory lap before the race is finished. And you certainly don't take one while the rest of us are in here passing budget extenders to keep the lights on. Of course, myself and others are going to vote for this extender because it's important that government keeps open. It's important that we're paying our dedicated employees who are doing such a great job to protect us, to keep us safe, to make sure our roads are safe, all the services they provide across the board. That's important. We need to keep government open. But let's be honest about what we're really doing here. We're not governing. We're failing the people who sent us here. And on Monday, if nothing changes, we won't just be failing them. We will be making history, but for all the wrong reasons. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I vote in the affirmative.
Well, there we go. Extender number 12, Phil. Great job, by the way, in Albany. Does it get frustrating? So this has got to be at least your 12th speech just on the fact that we don't have a budget, right?
Yeah, this is our 12th extender.
Yeah.
This ties last year's record. Monday, we're going to be doing another one for sure. Mm-hmm. That will break that record. This is going to be the latest state budget since 2010.
That one's
So
going to be
we-
hard to beat.
Yeah.
Wasn't that August or something crazy?
August, yeah. So, I mean, but this is the latest one in modern history. And so we're making history for all the wrong reasons. I mean, it's just an example of more dysfunction,
Yep.
failure of leadership, failure of one-party control, all while the governor's running around the state taking a victory lap for a budget that's not done, not voted on, no language. And even the speaker came out last week when she announced it was done. She put all of this stuff
How
up.
embarrassing was that?
He said, "There's no deal.
No.
There's no deal."
I mean, because I interviewed Joseph Hernandez that day, running for comptroller. So I wanted to ask him, and in the morning, it looked like, afternoon, Hochul said, "Oh, it passed. Or we're done with it. Not passed, but it's all done." And so I'm going, this is going to be an awkward conversation. Then Hasty comes out and says, "Oh, we're not even close." Yeah. So here we are a week later, over a week later, and where's this budget that she promised us?
I mean, this at the same time. I mean, our school districts.
Yep.
We have a school budget vote next week.
Yep. Next Tuesday.
They were waiting. They had to put a budget out without knowing their aid numbers. Our local governments are waiting to make on road projects because it's a shortened construction season. Things like that. But then all this happens, and the governor's running around taking a victory lap. You don't take the victory lap till you finish the race.
Right.
And there's still more to do. And there's no budget language. That was my questioning. Before that, I was asking, do we have language on these issues? Do we have details on this issue? And constantly the response from my colleague, who I have great respect for, I mean, he has a difficult job, saying, no, we're close. Well, close isn't the same thing as buttoning up the language that has to be reviewed. We need the ability to review it, go through it. So, and when I talked to him on Monday during our during our discussion on the Extender Monday, he said that we were looking at next week. Now, I'm not so sure. Even Senator Generis from the other side came out and said, we'd be lucky if we have it done before Memorial Day. Wow. Our session's scheduled to end Friday, June 5th. And I don't think it's going to extend beyond that because it's primary season. A lot of the Democrats, New York City have primaries in New York City. A lot of their members are being primaried. They have a June primary, so they're going to want to get out of there. So there's a lot of moving parts, but there's a lot of issues that are holding up this budget. I mean, there's policy issues that are baked into the budget that the governor brought in. And I'm not generally a fan of putting policy in the budget. Let's get the financials done. But she wouldn't talk any financials at all until some of her policy issues are addressed. What are the issues out there? Auto insurance, seeker reform to help with housing, some of the restrictions that come on with, environmental review for housing and others. One big one that you might be hearing a lot about in those is immigration type policies.
With ICE. And
with ICE, and some of the things she's talking about are very bad. One ending, not allowing for 287 agreements between local sheriff's departments and ICE and federal officials, which I think is a big mistake. Not allowing for cooperation between local officials and federal officials. Not allowing individuals to go into schools or courthouses or wherever it may be. And the reason, or jails especially.
Yeah.
I mean, you think that's a safer environment.
The safest place you could do it.
Go where they're, to do that instead of having to just go around from community to community, because they're going to do that because they're going to go after people, especially criminals. And there's a lot of individuals who are here illegally that are criminals and dangerous criminals.
And I have a problem with the mask too, because
the mask.
I'm not opposed to the mask ban when we see like the anti-Semitic protesters in the street intimidating Jewish people going into synagogues. So when she first brought that up last year, I said that's not a ban. Now that the mask ban comes for ICE, again, misplaced priorities.
Right, but there is strong opposition to some of those mask bans from the Democrats on their side when we're talking about the other issues.
I know.
But when it's for law enforcement,
yeah.
And that just kind of goes to show it's like all these laws always seem to shift in favor of the criminal over law enforcement and crime victims, and I think that's very, very problematic. So like auto insurance, seeker, immigration, Tier 6. That's looking for pension reform for our public employees, and then there are some things we could look at.
Sure.
But one of the things I brought up on the floor this week is one of the issues that they're talking about. There's 3 different things, quite frankly. One is they want a reduction of the retirement age, because right under Tier 4, people who are in Tier 4, and the biggest mistake they made with the pension system is, in my opinion, when they did this back in 1998 or 2002, they eliminated the 3% contribution for people after 10 years. So after 10 years of service, you don't have to pay the 3% contribution. What that did is it created a big sucking sound coming out of the pension system, money going in, and there has to be a guaranteed rate of return on that investment. And if it's not made by the investment, then it has to be made up by the state taxpayers, the property taxpayers. That's why our local budgets were going through the roof. school districts, local municipalities. So that's why we created Tier 6, which, had the contribution reinstated and changed the retirement age. Under Tier 4, you could retire after 30 years with 55, after 55 after 30 years of service. This changed to 63, so some people want to reduce the retirement age, and that's part of the discussion, and you can have those discussions. But the thing that caught my eye, and I asked a question, and some of the reports are, it sounds like that this is just might be done for teachers. And that's very problematic. I don't know how you can just do it for teachers if you're going to do a change to the pension system.
Also, think of that, what that could do for the education system if we start needing teachers. I mean, some would argue maybe there's too many teachers, but still at the same point, if they can retire that much earlier.
Well, yeah, but I understand the argument, but if you're going to make changes,
oh, it's got to be across the board.
You got to do it across the board, because all this is just going to open up the door for the next phase, and I just don't understand how you can do it for one or the other, and then who's going to pay for it? When we did Tier 6 back in 2011, and I supported that at the time because we were talking about significant cost to our local municipalities, and I stand by that vote. And it has saved some costs. But part of the language we put in there is any additional costs, any enhancements that are made are supposed to be borne by the state of New York. Governor Hochul has not indicated a reason to do that. We've had other enhancements that have come tinkering with it. That hasn't happened, and so the state should absorb any changes instead of the local municipalities, and that could be problematic, especially when we're talking with other unfunded mandates coming down the pipeline. Certainly, the climate is another part of the policy. Now, quite frankly, I mean, I'm not a fan of policy, but anything we can do to change some of these climate laws, delays, like we're talking about the EV school bus mandate, it seems like there's some
even
room to move
Democrat.
there. Yes.
Yeah. I think we'll talk about that in a moment, because I don't want to run too late, and we got a bunch of questions coming in. So let's stay with us. One quick thing I forgot to mention this morning: if you got to make your Preakness picks, send them in now. All right, we'll be right back. Back them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. In that studio, Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Phil, we got a lot to talk about here. A lot of questions from viewers, and we always appreciate that. First up, Mark writes in, Phil, it seems like Hochul is not afraid to hand out money to illegals, but as far as legal people, she doesn't care if we suffer. More of a comment. Another comment, why does upstate New York always have to bail out New York City? That's a good question.
It is a good question. I mean, we are one state, but it seems like all the focus is going to New York City. I mean, Governor Hochul came out at the beginning, said $1.5 billion. Now this week she meets with the mayor, and it's about up to $4 billion. Mm-hmm. The $4 billion is not a direct cash handout, but there are changes they're making. There's things that the state's taking over that would be responsibility of the city. There's amortization changes to the pension. Part of that is this $500 million peer-to-terror tax for second homes. That's over $5 million, but now we're talking here about $1 million. And the concern out there with that discussion too is, number one, they're talking about possibly adjusting it to upstate New York, and that would be problematic. But also, it's just this constant attack on success. I mean, and they think that these individuals are just going to keep paying these taxes.
We were talking about
when
Ken
they're
Griffin.
Yeah.
With what's around, and I don't blame him. He's not going to talk to him until he gets an apology.
Yes, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, this guy's standing outside his home saying you need to pay more money. Mm-hmm. This is a guy who hundreds of millions of dollars at charity, business. He wants to grow business. He wants to make investment. Why would anyone want to make investments in the city of New York with a mayor who is anti-business and anti-success, and like the financial stock market, that doesn't have to be there.
No.
We see what's happening. Dallas is just opening up. There is financial industry, financial sector is leaving now, going to not New York, going to Florida, going to Texas, going to other states, and they even wanted in the One House budget to put increase taxes on financial firms. Why? This is just not rational.
And back to your point about the second home tax, the Senator Leroy Comrie, Democrat from Queens, he says this budget process is broken. It needs to be fixed, because they learned about the two-tier tax from the media. We should know these things. It shows a level of disrespect. That's one of the biggest problems, the lack of transparency.
It is lack of transparency, because even when I was talking to my colleague, Mr. Prado, who's the chairman of Ways Meeting, he's a very good guy, very conscientious. I like our debates. They're always cordial and civil. Mm-hmm. And I try to get information. And he said there's reports this week that no one's even seen language on the peer-to-tier tax.
No.
And he goes, we haven't seen stuff. And every time I ask him on language, well, we're close. Yeah. We're close. Yeah. But yet the governor's running around saying we got an agreement. So it's just one thing after another.
Well, that was just foolish.
But no, and this has been budget process is not only broken, it's dysfunctional. And like I said, it's a failure of leadership. It's a failure of one-party control.
Ken writes in, how many extenders does a supermajority have to put up to delay the budget approval until after the election?
Well,
be careful.
Well, there's a couple of things that are going on there. I mean, obviously, the legislature is not getting paid, and rightfully so.
Right.
But the problem is, this does not apply to Governor Hochul too. If
Not that she
if
needs
the
it after we saw her
legislature- yeah,
filing.
I know, right? But it's just, I think it's the principal thing.
It
of
is, I agree.
But the thing that's going to move this thing quicker is we got elections in June.
Yeah.
Primary elections in New York
June
City.
23rd.
The Dems, they have a lot of primaries, so they want to get this done. And where this is really going to infringe upon is our last day of session is June 5th. And usually after the budget, then they start dealing with the legislative agenda. And there are some terrible bills out there. The one good thing I think about this budget delay, if there's anything good of it, it's putting so much attention on this. It's delaying from doing some of these other terrible, bad policies. And believe me, there's some terrible, bad policies that are under discussion up there. So that slows that down. So we'll see where it goes. But yeah, next Monday will be budget extender number 13. And again, I'm not sure if it's going to be done next
Why
week.
do they do them so short? Is there a reason for that?
Well, I think mainly is because we're up in Albany, we're there from Monday to Thursday.
Oh, so they
So we
squeeze
do
them
it.
in.
But, I remember Governor Cuomo, and it was smart in some of us. I mean, I didn't agree with the politics, but he
knew how to.
I don't think this would have been happening under him. Not giving him any credit, but one time he passed he did a 6-week extender, and some of the legislature got really nervous, like, we're going to be here 6 weeks without pay, and boy, did that get him to the table. And the other question the governor has at her disposal, if she wanted to, she could put policy in the extender. And then you're voting up or down to keep the government open or not. So I think that's why, you see some of the Democrats not wanting to be too harsh with her, because she could force her hand, because Governor Patterson forced that hand, and Cuomo threatened it in the past. So,
A couple other things. I don't think this is, well, it says good morning, Frank, and good morning to you. Could you ask Phil how the town of Corning can raise your property assessment up $103,000 when you have not made any improvements on your property? That's not necessarily a Phil question. We'll get someone on Corning, though, because I've heard a lot, assessments are always
the
major issue.
reassessments always cause problems. Revaluations, they always cause problems for local people, and there's a process to deal with, but it's not a fun or easy process.
No.
And
So I'll get someone on.
questions.
Yeah, a great question. $103,000. My goodness.
Yeah, that's staggering.
We'll let you know when we get somebody on. Sergeant Dave writes in, completely unrelated to New York, but good morning, Frank. Good morning, Sergeant Dave. Just my thoughts. Can you imagine any Democrat accomplishing what President Trump has, but yet keep demonizing him? Plus, the Democratic faithful fall like sheep. Thank you, Sergeant Dave. Next comment. Phil writes in, or not Phil, to Phil. Phil does a great job in Albany and seems to be one of the only few Republicans that has the guts enough to expose these dysfunctional Democrats and fight for the upstate taxpayer. That's a nice one.
It's nice, but believe me, there's a lot of my colleagues on the Republican side that are speaking out.
I agree. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. This came in earlier. Would you ask Phil why he was trying to sell the nuclear power plant when we have an overabundance of natural gas, which would help the landowners and keep America and U.S. with clean energy?
First, a couple things. I'm a diehard supporter of natural gas. I've said that. I said that on the floor. I believe we should be fracking in the southern tier. I've said that all the time. I've pointed out the hostility towards the natural gas by the previous administration. First, they ban fracking. Then what they do is they attack pipelines to get the gas in, and then they deny air permits for new natural gas power plants. So, I mean, for example, even under Governor Hochul, who says she's for an all-of-the-above approach, in 2021, her administration turned down permits for 2 natural gas power plants, which would have helped with the general generation and baseload generation. Now, on nuclear, I am a supporter of nuclear. I don't think I'm selling a nuclear power plant, but I'm selling nuclear technology, and that's part of the all-of-the-above approach. 20% of our power comes from nuclear energy right now. And then the thing about nuclear, it's baseload, dispatchable, reliable generation. We need dispatchable baseload generation that's available 24/7. Wind and solar is not available 24/7. That does not count. And when we have these clean energy mandates that we have to meet, nuclear is clean technology. And not necessarily we're going to build more nuclear power plants, but there's a technology that's being advanced that we need to kind of be supporter of, and that I support of. And then when I had the legislation that was held up, let's have this office that would coordinate this activity in New York State. So when that technology develops, but that's the problem. We're not there yet. That's why I've said we can't, just dismantle the affordable and reliable natural gas infrastructure supply and delivery system. And natural gas has always been referred to as a bridge fuel. You don't tear down a bridge before you build a new one. So I'm supportive of natural gas, but I think nuclear needs to be part of the equation. And on the other area, when I've said to people, even energy reporters, when they come to me about nuclear is far superior to wind and solar first of all, again, it's reliable, it's dispatchable, it's baseload generation, but also when you look at land use. Indian Point, which Governor Cuomo brilliantly decided to shut down, was 2,000 megawatts or 2 gigawatts of power that provided 25% of the power to New York City. That was on 240 acres of land. If you look at Fitzpatrick up in central New York, that's 800 megawatts on 900 acres. But for solar, you need 8 megawatts or 8 acres per megawatt.
Yeah.
The Climate Action Council plan calls for 60 gigawatts of solar. Remember, there's 1,000 megawatts in a gigawatt. So 60, you're talking about 480,000 acres land. And where's that land come from? It comes from upstate.
Not
It comes
Manhattan.
from farmland. We were talking about taking farmland, prime farmland away from our farmers. Now, who can blame? I don't blame the farmers for wanting to put wind and solar on their property because the state has hosed them on policy time and time again. When we talked about the Farm Labor Act, which puts more of a burden and financial strain on our farmers. Even on wind side, you're looking at 30 acres per megawatt. So from a not only dispatchable base load generation, but from a land use perspective, power density, solar is much more effective and better across the board.
All right, we got to
Not
take
solar, so nuclear.
Nuclear.
Sorry.
But solar, like you said, but nuclear is better. And and the problem is, the point that I was making before we go to break is that if you go in with an idea about fracking, it's a no-go. In one-party rule Albany, it's instantly a no-go. Where there seems to be a little bit of, at least with Governor Hochul, maybe a little bit of wiggle room about nuclear.
Yeah, and then but the Democrats, the socialists, don't want any part of it. They just want more wind and solar, and it doesn't work. I mean, it just doesn't work. It's not reliable energy. I mean, you're relying on the wind to blow or sun to shine to get your power. I just don't think so. It's just going to lead to dangerous and deadly blackouts.
Unrelated, right before we go to break, so I'll put the camera on me. I had a thought. On this school budget vote, they always tell you the contingency budget. It is always much lower. If you were at the store buying bread and it had 2 prices and you would tell the clerk you want the lower price, right? So why not do the same with a school budget? Vote for the lower budget, vote no. Thank you very much. On that note, we're going to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. But frankly speaking, after this. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. In that studio, we have Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Okay, Mark writes in, Phil, I see Chemung County is developing energy from a landfill, like Bath. I think that's a great idea. What's your thoughts?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, we have to be innovative. I mean, let the market dictate it. But we see our local governments using this technology. And that's the thing. We have to look at technology to advance and address some of these things that can work if we allow innovation to take charge and allow flexibility instead of saying anything that has to do with natural gas is not allowed. And unfortunately, there are those who don't want any type of use of natural gas whatsoever. They like to say fossil fuel. It's anti-natural gas, and I get concerned about that because I brought this up with a conversation, and I always say this, Paul. 71% of New Yorkers do not want a ban on natural gas, including 76% of independents. 2/3 of New Yorkers want a balance between renewable resources and natural gas, including 74% of Democrats. So why isn't the Democratic Party listening to their own people that want natural gas to be a part of the equation? And I'm not saying we shouldn't invest in renewable technology. We should and we are. It should be a part of the portfolio. It shouldn't be the only it shouldn't be the only thing in the portfolio. We need natural gas. We need nuclear. They need to be a part of it if we're going to be successful and have a diversified energy portfolio.
Steve writes in, says, good morning, Phil. You have to remember they don't mind eliminating farmland in New York State. They want to put a tax on flatulence by the cows. They also don't want us to eat beef any longer. So all of it runs parallel to the things that they are doing. If it takes 8 acres to create 1 gigawatt of power, that's just something that the people have to deal with. The other fact is that when they can claim eminent domain, people have absolutely no say what they will put on the solar farms. It is interesting, the solar farm, because the state has the rights over the towns and municipalities.
I mean, they can put the solar and wind, the state gets to decide if that gets cited, despite local opinion, local control. It's just getting rammed down their throats. And also they're taking away the ability for locals to assess it too, because the state wants to take that over as well. And you mentioned about the flatulence. It's not that. We had a colleague that, remember, they want to limit the number of cows you could have on your farm. I mean,
we had a fun time with that. But you know what's scary is we have fun with that, and then because of Albany, you go, could this actually happen, though?
Yeah. If it wasn't true, it'd be funny.
Yeah, exactly.
It's scary stuff.
Do you think the EV bus, the delay is going to go through because it does seem like there's some appetite for it?
Think we're going to see a delay. Optimistic, and I tried to press my colleague on it, and he goes, it's most likely you're going to see something like that. They don't like to give too much information in those discussions, but you do see reports coming out about it. But this is something we've been pushing. You've seen it in my comments that I've sent you every time I try to bring that up, at least over the last few times, knowing that it's coming up. We bring it up in the one house debate, saying that over and over again. We've done press conferences, we've done things like that. I think it's going to happen. It's not
It's
enough,
got to.
but it sounds like what the talk is they're talking about is right now under the law you're supposed to start purchasing in July 2027. It sounds like that's getting pushed back, at least from reports, to 2032, 5 years, and then you have to convert your entire fleet by 2035. It sounds like that's getting pushed back to 2040. Which kind of goes to my argument. What I still say on the floor, why we, under the current law, why are we asking school districts and local property taxpayers to convert their entire fleets a full 5 years before the state of New York has to convert their fleets? Oh, and by the way, the state of New York has an out for feasibility costs for whatever reason they want. If they can't do it, they don't have to do it. But our school districts do not have that same luxury. And of course, the state of New York doesn't have a timeline that they have to buy these things. They don't have to start buying them by now. They took their timelines away. There were timelines for them too, you know, certain percentage by so many days. They took them away because they knew they couldn't meet them, but not away from our school district. But I think something's going to happen. It needs to happen. But quite frankly, we should just eliminate it altogether.
Do you have faith that Governor Hochul is going to make serious change? The only reason I say that is I did appreciate her quote where when they asked, why are you making these changes? She said, what, I live in reality or something. Yeah. We could make that argument if that's true or not. But do you think it's going to be major changes or just kind of window dressing?
I am hopeful for some significant change, but there's not going to be enough.
No.
I think she's going to take a victory lap on it, just like she did in bail reform. The things they're talking about is pushing back some of the timelines and how that works, the levels. The one thing that's I'm watching very closely is the methodology, because right now, and then when we passed the CLCPA, they use a 20-year methodology to measure emissions. Every other state -1 uses a 100-year methodology.
Right.
The U.S. uses a 100-year methodology. International code uses a 100-year methodology. And if we don't change the methodology, I remember 2 years ago, the commissioner of DEC was out there, co-chair of the Climate Action Council, said if we don't change to a 100-year methodology, it will increase prices at the pump 63 cents a gallon, and increase natural gas home heating costs by 80%. But yet, then again, recently, that report came out and was modified and is much more significant. If we don't make some significant changes, it would increase home heating costs to New Yorkers to over $4,000 annually. It would increase a price of a gallon of gas by more than $2.23 a gallon on top of what it is right now. It would increase the price of diesel by $2.41 a gallon on top of what it is right now. It would increase utility costs for small and medium-sized commercial businesses by 46%, depending on utility and facility. And the other one it would do is it would increase delivery truck operations by more than 60%. So what does that mean? Your food prices are going to go up because food is shipped. 96% of our goods in New York are shipped by truck. We have 300,000 workers in the truck industry. So your housing prices are going to go up because lumber is going to be shipped. Those prices are going to go up, for housing. All those costs are going to go up. That's going to be borne by everyone. So the cost impacts are not just on the businesses, they're on the individuals and the families and the businesses. And it's just something needs to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, reality needs to strike in. So my concern with Governor Hochul is that she's only worried, the only day she cares about is November of 26.
That's it.
Because look what she did with congested pricing right after the election. She paused it, and right after the election, she turned around and implemented it again. So that's what I worry about this governor. She doesn't seem to really have a backbone to stand up to the progressives, but hopefully something gets done in this. I mean, and if it does, I would applaud on that for sure.
Absolutely.
But I don't think it's going to be enough.
No. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. In that studio, Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Comment from a viewer: what do you mean Governor Hochul won't stand up to progressives? She is a progressive. She plays whatever side she can. Remember, she's not the brightest bulb in the pack, and that's why Andrew Cuomo picked her. On that note, we got a lot to cover, Phil, and we don't have a lot of time to get there. Sure. But I wanted to mention our volunteer firefighters, because they're such an important part of our community. I know you have, as long as I've known you, been an advocate for our volunteer firefighters. And it seems to be a kind of a hot topic in Albany right now. People may have missed. Tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Yes, and certainly just point out, yes, 100% our volunteer firefighters, our volunteer emergency workers, they are actually the backbone of our rural communities. When I talk about our rural communities, I talk about our farmers are the heart of our rural communities. Our volunteer emergency workers are the backbone of our rural communities. Mm-hmm. I was just at a banquet last week in Hammondsport. Where they honored all these individuals for years of achievement. The chief there, Bill Frizz, friend of mine, good guy, 40 years as chief. But they were recognized one individual for 75 years of service.
Wow.
I mean, this, and from my traveling around the communities and banquets, when I try to get to as many as I can, I can't get to them all. It's frustrating, but it's not just an individual commitment. It's a family commitment. It's a generational commitment from time and time again, year after year. You see that. You see the entire family involved, whether it's as a volunteer, as an auxiliary member. It's just come around. And these are individuals. They didn't just protect their neighbor. They don't just protect their neighbor's property. They protect the property taxpayer, because there was a study that was out that said if the services our volunteers provided had to be paid services, it would cost more than $4 billion annually in additional property taxpayers. So they look out and do a great job. So the background on this is we know we are losing more volunteers. We don't do enough. They have more mandated training courses. So we've done some things. We did a thing to help with a stipend for training courses. But we had my colleague Joe Angelino from Binghamton area. He had a bill. It would provide a $2,500 income tax credit to volunteers. I mean, that's significant. So we brought that up as what we call as a motion to discharge. That's like when they're not wanting to bring it up in the committee, so we offer this as a motion to discharge. The majority decides which bills they want to put on the calendar for motion to discharge. They chose this bill. So we went up and we all spoke on the bill. They said it's a policy vote. It's not. They said it's not policy. This isn't a vote on the merits. They said it's a vote on procedure or process, which is BS, because we've said all along, again, this is about vote on the policy of it. So they shot it down. $2,500 tax credit for a volunteer fire.
When they throw around money for everything.
Yeah, in the context of a $250 billion budget, we're talking about the bailout for New York City of $4 billion. We can't do a $2,500 tax credit. So we hammered them. We did social media. We hammered them, and they got a tremendous amount of pushback from the volunteers around the state, and rightfully so. So what they did is they came out with their own bill. And it basically provides up $800 tax credit for an individual.
Nothing, I guess,
it's better than nothing. It pales in comparison to what we owe
Doesn't
them.
it almost sound like it? Though it's almost like when we got our rebate check or whatever.
Yes.
Because it's almost more insulting than it is. I'm sure they're not going to turn down the 800. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But at some point, it's like, this is what you think of us?
Right. Well, the other thing, I mean, the good thing that the bill does and what our bill would have done, because right before you had to choose between the property tax credit that you might be available and the income tax credit. Now you can do both, and you should be able to do both. And it's just little things. It's just a small gesture. So I supported the bill. We all supported it. We weren't going to support, but we pointed out we had a better bill. They could have passed our bill. They chose not to because they wanted to play politics with it. And it just goes to show that, when people say we're in the minority, can't get things, we can, because we brought it up and we hammered them for it, and then they got their backlash. And that's why I think the same thing you see happening with all the climate stuff. The EV school bus ban, we've been hammering at these changes we've been talking about. We are moving the needle when people speak up and they go to these Democrats in these areas in upstate New York or in Long Island, maybe not New York City, but in these areas, people say, hey, we got to do something. So they did something this week that it's helpful, but it's not enough.
And I read this morning, New York State has lost between 30 and 40% of its volunteer firefighters since the start of the decade.
Yeah, it's
30 and 40%.
It's very, very scary. So we need to do more. I mean, there's a lot of things we should be doing for our volunteers to help.
Okay, so I saw this morning on Empire Report. Is there really, I'm sure there is, talks of redistricting?
There is.
Okay.
Yeah. And Governor Hochul says, she says, we're going to do what we can to fight back against what the Republicans are doing.
Our whole life, or our whole state is gerrymandered.
Yes, and New York's the one who started it.
I know.
Remember, they gerrymandered back in the congressional races. They got caught and they got thrown out of court, and then they changed it again. I mean, they continue to change the rules in the middle of the game on policies if they don't like it, and then they changed it. They jerry-rigged the courts. You remember, if you want to take an election case, where do you got to take it? New York City, Westchester, Albany, or Buffalo. Democratically controlled areas to go through those courts, and they stack the Court of Appeals.
Yeah.
So it's one thing after another. So
I knew they would, because you could see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
But it's so amazing when our whole history has been gerrymandering.
Yeah, but the thing about it, just so you know, the voters will get a say in this, because you have to change the Constitution. They have to pass 2 concurrent legislatures, so they would have to do something. And they're trying to see. There's an article I read this morning that said they're looking at multiple options, put a bunch of options on up to pass, and then they can reconsider which ones they want to take next year, because it has to pass this legislature before the end of the term, and the next one. Then it could go on the ballot in 2027 for 2028 elections. Interesting, they want to go on during the 2027 2027 elections. Remember, they wanted to say everyone on even year elections. They don't want that to be an even year election. They want it so they can do it in 27 when not as many people participate.
Right.
So they can take it and do it for the congressional elections in 2028.
Interesting. All right, we got a little bit before we
Hypocrites.
wrap up. Absolutely. Get those last second comments in because we only have a couple minutes. We'll be right back after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. In that studio, we have Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. All right, Phil, we talked about it quickly on the program this morning, really early on. I just can't believe that this matching funds for Blakeman starts as it's supposed to be to help the little guy defeat the incumbent. Then they take it away from him because of a piece of paper that he filed that or didn't file that does not exist. So then they go to he takes it to the courts. The courts say, okay, we'll give him the matching funds, and the Democrats have the audacity to appeal.
It's amazing. I mean, the hypocrisy, the audacity of their side on these issues. And, you know, they didn't just do it to Mr. Blakeman. They did it to even the other minor party candidates. They don't want competition. Here's the party that talks about democracy. We're for democracy, the threats to democracy. They're the threats to democracy. Exactly. They don't want a program they created, which I think is a terrible program we shouldn't have. But if you have it, you got to allow people
Blakeman's
to participate.
Play by the rules.
He's playing by the rules. I mean,
he'd be nuts not to take it.
And to say they kicked him off because they said he didn't follow the rules, following the form. What form? There is no form. I'm still not even sure if a form exists.
Last I read, it does not exist.
So how are you supposed to correct it? They allowed him the ability to correct it, to fill out the form. And then what if he can't fill out the form? What if the form doesn't work? So
I'm going to get a little conspiratorial because Governor Hochul didn't take the matching funds, almost as if she saw this coming, because now she can take the high ground where it doesn't affect me. I didn't fill out the form improperly. You know what I mean?
And she's just got so much money coming in the door. Of course she's going to turn it down.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean,
I was so relieved earlier in the week when they gave it to Blakeman, and now I'm thinking, I thought it was okay. Everybody knows it's partisan. We'll just drop it at that, and then they still have the audacity to appeal.
Yeah, I just don't understand them, but it is what it is. But hopefully, you know, it upholds and moves forward. But you know, I know Mr. Blakeman's been here. He's been in your studio.
Yes.
He's been
did a great job recording.
Yeah, so
many people have been talking about it after that because it was I try to remind people it was a press conference. It wasn't a rally, right? So when people did happen to be walking by in Corning and having the conversation with him, he was the talk of the town.
Yeah, and people enjoyed it. They took pictures with him. I mean, so I hope we can get up here more and more areas. But I think, listen, there is a hunger to get Kathy Hochul
I agree.
out of our governorship because she hasn't done a good job. I mean, so we need someone to change it, and I think he can capitalize on that. And I just think there's people want to see him more, and it's hard. It's a big state, but he's got to get up here.
All right, before we go, we talked with Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski last week. He stole your Friday. Thank you for watching, though. We did appreciate the comments and the questions. How was it at St. Bonaventure?
Oh, what a great day.
Yeah.
I was so honored to be there. You know, Joe obviously represents St. Bonaventure, George Burrell. We did a resolution of my Democratic colleague, Bill Conrad from the Buffalo area. He's a former rugby coach. The St. Bonaventure won the national championship in December of 25 for rugby, the men's rugby team.
That's awesome.
That's their second men's rugby championship in the past several years. And the women's team won a championship in between. So I've gone back. We passed a resolution. It's passed the legislature. We gave them out to all the team. And I remind people, I always show up the resolution. I'm like, this actually passed the state legislature. It's one good thing that passed in Albany this year. But to do that and take pictures with them and just say, you know, and I had to tell them, I go, listen, you know, I'm here more because I'm Bonaventure.
Right.
And I have my connections with rugby with my daughter and my son who played. And I said, but my daughter played with some of the women from the women's team. We had some kids from Corning that played at St. Bonaventure, so there's a connection there. I know Bob McGee, the head rugby coach for the Corning program, knows Bill Conrad, you know, because they coached against each other. So it's just that there's a connection there. But for me, it's the Bonaventure connection. I said to them, I go, listen, this I told them I was texting with my college friends that I'm going there, and they were all thrilled. They all said, congratulations. I go, this Bona family runs things so thick. So when you leave here, if you ever need anything, when I say call me, I'm serious, reach out, because Bonaventure family looks out for each other. But I got to hold the national championship
That's
trophy.
that's cool.
I got to wear the ring. I had the resolution. So I have pictures. I saw my old old friend of mine who I went to school there. He's like, he works in the athletics department
cool.
at CMS. So it was great.
Well, send pictures if you
I'm
get a
going to
chance.
send pictures.
We'd love to
yes.
see them.
It was last Friday, so I haven't had a chance to do it.
No
but I
problem.
will get them to you and post them because
Yeah,
I'm
we'll show 'em.
smiling ear to ear.
Yep. Well, Phil, thanks for giving us so much time this morning. We covered a lot, but there's so much more to cover.
Yes, and I'll definitely be back whenever the budget's passed. Hopefully, it's before
Let's
August.
do it before that. How's
Yeah,
that,
so,
okay?
yeah.
Just to be on the safe side. We'll book you before. But thanks, Phil. All right, join us on Monday morning. Next week, we got a busy week. We're going to hear about Miss Colonial Days coming right up. We're going to hear about Tony Pucci's new book, Whoppers and Other Lies. We've got the Shamong Fair to learn about. Heritage of America Band playing at the Clemens Center on May 24th. We're going to be talking school vote on Tuesday, so don't miss a second. But frankly speaking, here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We'll see you Monday morning. I look forward to it already.